So here is a hub. It's a front right hub, and the studs, you can barely make it out, but you can kind of see an R right there in the top of the stud, and that tells you that it's a right-handed thread. So this is a right front hub for my 48 Power Wagon, and this is original. The truck had about 22,000 miles on it. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking these wheel studs and knocking them out. And I'm going to be cleaning up the machine surfaces. I'm going to be tightening the studs that hold the axle in place. And then I'm going to be repainting and recoating the hub so that everything is good to go. And I'm going to check the condition of the races inside and get it ready to mount on the axle. So the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be checking out all of the studs that hold the axles on. Now these studs are kind of special. If you can get a close look at it, it's a little bit blurry, but it's a stepped stud. There's two different size threads. The coarse thread is the part that threads into the machined hub, and the fine thread is the part that sticks out and has these axle nuts securing it. This is what the axle nut looks like. It's a fine thread, and it's a tall nut, so there's more threads per inch on a nut like this. So what I will be doing is thread locking using this blue thread locker. This says medium blue thread locker. And I will thread lock the stud in place, and I will tighten it in place utilizing a stud tool, which is a ratchet that clamps the side of the stud as you twist it in. So here's the stud, and it's got the blue thread locker, which is a medium grade thread locker, and we're just going to thread it in all the way until it bottoms out. And then I'm going to get the tightener and get it cranked down. So if you look very closely, that there's a little wheel in there with serrations on it, and it grabs the stud, and you crank it around, and it tightens it down. So I tighten down that stud, and this is the residual thread locker, and we pretty much clean that up and get it off of the casting. And in the meantime, while I was waiting for that to set a little bit, I went and checked the rest of these studs with the stud tightening tool, and they were all pretty good. So basically, that's it right there. They're all screwed down now. Now the next step is going to be removing these large wheel studs so that I have a clear surface to work. Now these large wheel studs are actually pressed in from behind. They're not threaded in, they're pressed in or tapped in, but I'm going to use a 20-ton press. I'm going to press them out and down and pop them out, give myself a clean machine surface that I can then clean up farther and clean up the center hub so that this is ready for painting. And then I'm going to clean up the bottom. Now my guess is that this hub, because it's rusty, there's a good possibility this thing was run hot and it burned the paint off, because there's no real reason for the paint to be missing in that particular manner unless this part of the hub itself got very hot and baked the paint off. So one of the things I'm going to be doing is taking these nuts, and I'm going to be screwing them on top of these studs so that we can protect the stud when we're doing any sort of operations involving the press or moving the piece around, because we really don't want these stud threads to get damaged in any way. And these are the original axle flange nuts, and I'll just be tying them down so they're just a thread or so above, and that gives me some solid protection on the stud itself. So it looks like when we were looking these studs over, some of the threads are a little messed up, and they're a 3/8 24, which is a fine thread die. That would be a die for threading. So basically we're going to thread this on and just do a little chasing to clean up the condition of the stud so that we don't have a problem. So this one seems to be going down okay without too much resistance, and we're able to clean it up pretty good and just chase it out. You can see how the threads kind of brighten up a little bit when you run the dye down in there. And I'm just doing this by hand just to chase them down. Now this one seems to be a little tougher. There must be something a little messed up on that thread. So that thread was definitely a little messed up, and I ended up getting a die handle so that I could basically run it on there with a little bit of torque. And the big thing is really keeping focused and not cross-threading. That's a very important thing. So you could see that that's on there. And I'm going to run that down and clean it up. So here's the end result. We're now able to take and easily thread the nut down. And that is what we need. We'll get that guy on there. And I think this one actually might need a little cleanup too. I think I'll check it. So it looks like I got past the bad thread, and you can see how those threads are now cut and nice and clean. It's a pretty simple process. Just a matter of being patient and not cross-threading anything and ruining it. So here's the end result. We're now able to take and easily thread the... Might need a little cleanup too. I think I'll check it. So because I have some limited clearance and it's hard to get the die handle in there, I'm actually using an 1 1/8" socket on a 1/2" drive ratchet to be able to drive this on. Now you just have to be very careful when you're doing it, and very slow and easy. So it looks like I got past the bad thread, and you can see how those threads are now cut and nice and clean. It's a pretty simple process. Just a matter of being patient and not cross-threading anything and ruining it. Well, it looks like the problem is more the nut than the stud. So the threads on that nut are a little bit gummed up towards the back end. I'm still going to slide it on there just about as far as it'll go there to protect the very end of that stud. Doesn't really matter that it sticks out a little bit farther. It's only there as a protective measure to keep all of these studs from getting banged up. So here we are. We've moved the hub assembly over to a press, and this is a 20-ton hydraulic shop press, and we kind of have it jigged up so that it's supported on both sides, and there's a pipe allowing the stud itself to push down into a void, and this piece of metal here is just supporting the shoulder of the hub so that it doesn't twist when it's under pressure. So here we are. The press is all set up and in place, and any solid piece of metal, in this instance it happens to be another wheel stud that I'm using to press down and apply pressure on that stud. So I'm just bringing this in line. It's making some closure here. You can see there's a little bit of tilt as the pressure is applied. And the pressure is building up on the gauge a little bit. And there it goes. And it's going to reach a point where it'll just drop right out into the hole. Right about now. Well, there we go. So that's the end result right there. One pressed out stud. So one down and 4 more to go. Awesome. Okay, so we're down to our last stud, and it's pressing out pretty easy. It's the mechanism here. It's basically a hydraulic ram. And there it goes, nice and easy. Drops down. And out it is.